Hafade, aloha mai kākou. Welcome everyone to this event featuring amazing Hawaiian poets. This event is presented by UC Berkeley's Arts Research Center with the support of the Engaging the Senses Foundation and co-sponsorship from the Center for Race and Gender and the Departments of English and Ethnic Studies at UC Berkeley. My name is Craig Santos Perez, and I'm a professor at the University of Hawai at Mānoa, and currently Arts Research Center Poetry Fellowship Facilitator. I'm honored to have the opportunity to organize and host today's poetry reading. Before we get started, I want to offer a few acknowledgements. First to Lori and Beth of ARC for bringing together and imagining this event. And of course, to all our poets who you will hear from shortly. Also want to acknowledge that UC Berkeley sits on the territory of Huichin, the ancestral and unceded land of the Chochenyo-speaking Ohlone peoples, specifically the confederated villages of Lisjan. I myself am zooming in from Hawaii, the island of Oahu, of course, the traditional archipelago of the Kanaka Ōiwi or Native Hawaiian peoples. Now for today's show, we'll have each poet read for about 15 minutes. And then after, we will have a facilitated conversation. And all of you joining us on YouTube's live stream are welcome to post your questions and comments in the chat there. And hopefully we can be able to ask our poets today. Our first reader is Kealiʻi MacKenzie, who's the author of the chapbook From Hunger to Prayer, a queer poet of Kanaka Ōiwi, European and Chinese descent. His work appears in or is forthcoming in many national and international poetry journals. He's a past member of the Worcester Poetry Slam team, and he has performed his poetry around the US and the Pacific. A co-editor for Bamboo Ridge's Snaring the Sun's Speculative Works from Hawaii and Beyond. He received an MA in Pacific Island Studies and an MLIS from the University of Hawaii at Mānoa. So please, wherever you're zooming in from or YouTubing in from, put your hands together for Kealiʻi MacKenzie.
Well, thank you so much, Craig, for that wonderful introduction. I want to say a mahalo to you and to UC Berkeley's Arts Research Center for hosting us today. And a big mahalo to my fellow readers, my fellow poets. A special shout out to my parents who should be on the YouTube live stream, as well as some of my coworkers from HMSA who may be listening in as well. I will share a couple of poems. The first poem I'm going to share today is from the aforementioned chapbook, which I'll hold up now, From Hunger to Prayer. This piece that I'm sharing is titled Kanaloa ai Moku. And the thing you need to know is that Kanaloa is the Hawaiian deity of the ocean. He also is the ocean itself. The inspiration for this poem came from many things that are happening, and most of that's in the context of the poem itself. But one inspiration that was pointed out to me by a dear friend Liz Soto was that I was definitely drawing from Hayao Miyazaki's film Princess Mononoke. And within that, in that movie, a deity of the forest is turns into a demon due to the harmful impacts of humanity. So, Kanaloa ai Moku. When I approach the ocean, I pray to Kanaloa, Kahe'e, master of salt water, ʻawa drinking companion of Kane, for permission to enter, to swim free, so I may not be swept into deep, unfurling currents. I pray whenever I go to the beach, to the spirits of that place, grant me peace, grant me freedom, grant me the joy of water, open sky, salt-kissed skin. Even when I was in Aotearoa, New Zealand, at the other end of the Pacific Ocean, I asked for permission before I touched the waters at Piha, felt cold, ocean-stained mud. But my God has changed. Kanaloa, whose body forms include ʻawa, maiʻa, and the great octopus of the Kumulipo, who ushered wa'a of all kinds across the Pacific What does it mean when foreigners change you? When you become a terror, Aimoku, eater of land? How many islands will you devour before we understand? How many prayers must we say? Now at the shore, a new prayer goes out. E Kanaloa e. My God, what will become of us once your appetite is satiated? And I will say I'm not used to not hearing audience reactions. So like I'm seeing my Zoom participants and their smiles and knowing that that's the thing right there. So the next piece I'm going to share is a bit of a longer piece, and one that I started writing when I was living in Worcester, Massachusetts. And Craig, you got the pronunciation perfect when you said that, just so you know. I started writing it then, but it was really once I was living in Hawaii that I was able to sort of really craft this piece further. I mentioned my parents earlier, and this is informed in part by a story my dad told me when I was in high school, I believe. Legacies. 1. As part of her last will and testament, the Hawaiian chief Bernice Pauahi Bishop established Kamehameha Schools, an institution that seeks to improve the capability and well-being of Native Hawaiian students. Her will requested all teachers at the school be of the Protestant faith, a colonizing religion of Hawaii. 2. The American Board of Commissioners for Foreign Missions planted the cross in Hawaii. The descendants of Puritan New England, American missionaries taught us the gospel, taught Christ's love and Christ's judgment. We also learned kapalapala, writing, our metaphors and language of over 1,000 years reduced to words on paper. Kapalapala, a more powerful gift than religion alone, this sprouted the realization that we could write our own histories, legends, culture into the future. But other gifts sprouted different. Shame. Shame for not wearing missionary clothes, those woolen jackets meant for the bitter New England winters, but rather clothing that was more appropriate for a tropical climate. Our skin, accustomed to the gentle fern-bending wind, turned itchy and overheated in an attempt at civilized Christian clothes. We learned American disassociation from the body and its joys, learned gender norms and roles not as optional, but hand in hand as a second gospel, learned to binary our gender, our sexuality, our families, anything different or too Hawaiian, aikane, funalua, mahu, ho'olua, was labeled sin. What was left but the sandwiching of our bodies between salvation and our storied past, renamed heathen, renamed dark, renamed so as to forget? Isn't forced forgetting a kind of violence? But we didn't completely forget, did we? 3. My father recalls how in a high school history class at Kamehameha Schools, students were required to partake in a debate on colonialism. They were assigned pro or con positions. They had to debate the merits of each argument. This exercise meant to sharpen the minds of the student body, give them critical thinking skills, but in good American reason. 4. I grew up in and was educated in Massachusetts, the belly of the beast, the land which bred America's fervent missionary sons and daughters and ejected them into the world to spread Christian awakening. In my 11th grade honors history class, we rushed through the 1890s and America's overseas imperial reach. In our textbook, there was a portrait of Hawaii's last queen, Liliuokalani. A scant paragraph stated the overthrow of the Hawaiian kingdom and that Hawaii became part of the US in 1898. I wanted more explanation, depth, acknowledgement. This was not right. There was more to this story, but my teacher shrugged. So what? Move on. History needs to be addressed, and while this may seem sad, it is not required for your education. 5. My father said his group argued the con position in the debate. They pointed to India as an example of how colonialism harms a people, its country, and land, strips them of autonomy. The teacher, however, disagreed. He supported colonialism as bringing civilization, government, and development to, quote, less fortunate people, unquote. Of course, no one questioned the American teacher or his support for colonial rule. This was not part of their experiment, the body politic. 6. Decades later, Dad mentioned how it never occurred to him or any other student that they lived in a colonized land, or that their own colonization made it near impossible to realize this fact. What could they have realized had they even considered such a thing? 7. By high school, most students and teachers assumed I was white. I remember how amazed they were when I said, no, I'm also Hawaiian and Chinese. One teacher said that explained my black hair. She never believed me that black hair also came from my mother's Irish side of the family. My friends were comfortable with me being Hawaiian, especially when my Chinese ancestry seemed so hidden or absent from my body. They were puzzled when I showed them pictures of my father's family, generations of mixed people blurring the lines of Hawaiian, white, and Asian, generations descending into a mixed comfort so common in Hawaii, but still foreign in Massachusetts. 8. My friends, however, never questioned my sexuality. The longing glances at other boys or crushes ripened over years. Being queer was never difficult for them. They did not hold fast to arcane Puritan rules or see two people in love as a threat, and realized this part of me before I did. 9. There is so much to realize too. What of this body? Descended from the same people as Pauahi and my father, a people who freely expressed intimacy, touch, pressed noses together to share air and mana as greeting. This body, shaped by a history that sees my forebears as expendable, tragic, and no longer alive or worse, reformed savages and coolies whose lives and culture only feed the fantasy of paradise. 10. What was passed down so that growing up I didn't question others when they assumed or declared me as white? Why did I pass? What part of native wasn't good enough to bring forth? 11. Why did I let society define what my sexuality meant? I remember when boys in the locker room brought up my name, could hear the scrape of faggot in their throats, all the while silence scarred my lips, safer to hide, deny, and hide. 12. A story is told of my Hawaiian great-grandmother, upset that her daughter, my aunt, married a man who was too Kanaka, whose Hawaiian last name wasn't good enough for her daughter. But when my grandfather married my tutu, she was all right, Hawaiian but with a good blend of Chinese and Haole. Her English name was more than appropriate. 13. My great-grandmother would have been so pleased to see my skin this pale, so horrified that I love men. How did this body inherit such silence about race and sexuality? How did this shame become the first emotion to overcome? Where did we learn this? Shame at being Hawaiian, shame at being queer, never questioning teachers or family, or the whole structure crafted on dispossession. All the while, the faint echo of kupuna from before and after my great-grandmother's lifetime begged me to remember we are a people who love who we want. Genealogy means we are always connected. Nothing dilutes lineage. Even when you forget our names or struggle to pronounce the names you do know, somehow, through the stories told by your father or mother, you know how the scent of white ginger guitars memories of the house in Kailua, the taste of Kalua pig or dried pie recall the salted kick of beach waves. Your body remembers, finds ways to hold on. Thank you. And I think I can hear birds in the background. They are not my pets. They are the natural birds of the outside. And I have 2 poems. I may only have time for one more, but so this might be my closing one. This is titled A Xenoanthropologist's Dialogue on Engaging with Homo sapiens Subjects. And just a little note, a xenoanthropologist, to my knowledge, is a made-up specialty specific to the TV show Star Trek, where one of the main characters had that specialty as a way of engaging with alien cultures. So the point of view here is an alien talking to human subjects. Before you emerged from the oceans, you knew salt, mixed into the water, mirrored in your tears, sweat, and blood. You knew it before Earth's skies cracked blue gradient into your irises. This is why you crave salt even before you crave sweet, sour, bitter, before you crave fat or even fresh water. You've always craved salt. Salinity's memory burned into your bones' pores. How similar the need for salt and your fear of drowning. If humans began in oceans, how rich that fear. How funny the way you swell from too much salt, as if to say, even though you need both water and salt, you're easily done by both, undone by too much of either. Your bodies fear returning to your aquatic origins, but you evolve. Humans grow in such unexpected ways. Will later generations, measured in epochs unfathomed in science fiction, tell of how you once breathed air, before that water, and now have need of neither? What would you become? How would you evolve? Would you still be human? Would it be better to ask your primeval ancestors, salt water fresh in their gills, if they could conceive of air or breath? Would they still gasp for water even as their mouths form cavernous to the rush of wind? What will you inhale as you leap forward? Or is this cocktail of oxygen and minor gases your final form? What will you crave if you ever evolve again? What will your bodies carry as a reminder of who you once were? And I will close out with that and say thank you very much for listening and joining us today. And I look forward to hearing what my fellow poets are reading today.
As mahalo, Kealiʻi, and mahalo to Kealiʻi's parents for raising such a talented poet and science fiction nerd. All right. Our next poet is Donovan Kūhiō Colleps, who is a Kanaka Ōiwi poet and editor. His book of docu-poetry, Proposed Editions, was originally published in 2014 by Tinfish Press. His recent work has appeared in Poetry, The Slowdown, Poets.org, and the Norton anthology, When the Light of the World Was Subdued, Our Songs Came Through. And actually that title comes from a line, or that line is from the Kumulipo, which is a very well-known genealogical chant here in Hawaii. So with that, please virtually welcome Donovan Kūhiō Colleps.
Aloha mai kākou. O Kūhiō ko inoa, ano pu'uloa mai au, maka mokupuni o Oahu. Just want to mahalo nui to the Arts and Research Center, UC Berkeley, to Lori and the whole ARC team for all the navigating that brings these readings together. Mahalo nui to Craig Santos Perez, to my fellow ʻŌiwi poets. Yeah, it's an honor to be reading with all of you. And of course, mahalo nui to everyone listening from wherever or from whenever you are. Hi, Mom. Love you. Aloha walea mahalo nui a o kuapo. So today, so many of the poems I'm going to be sharing with you today come from a newer collection I'm been working on for a few years, tentatively called Signs of Care. A lot of poems about kupuna, which if most of them are actually all about kupuna. So maybe I'll do a little quick intro of each one as I go through. So the first one I'm going to read is about my grandmother. It's dedicated to her. Her name was Josephine Onga Ayu. She passed away last year, but I enjoyed so many years having the privilege of helping to take care of her as she got old, as she navigated her way through dementia and Alzheimer's. So this is a poem for her called Kissing the Opelu. For my grandmother. I am water, only because you are the ocean. We are here, only because old leaves have been falling. A mulching of memories folding into buried hands. The cliffs we learned to edge. The tree trunk hollowed, humming. I am a tongue only because you are the body planting stories with thumb. Soil crumbs cling to your knees. Small stacks of empty clay pots, dreaming. I am an air plant suspended, only because you are the trunk I cling to. I am the milky fish eye, only because it's your favorite. Even the sound you make when your lips kiss the opelu socket is a mo'olelo. A slipper is lost in the yard. A hakule is chilling in the icebox. I am a cup for feathers, only because you want to fill the hours. I am a turning wrist, only because you left the hose on. Heliconias are singing underwater. Beetles are floating across the yard. Wow. So the next poem is also for her, for my tutu. It's also a Kanaloa poem, Kealiʻi. It was a hard poem to write, but it was very cathartic. Like all poems that I write about my elders, they actually helped me write them. So this was the last poem that my tutu and I wrote together, and it's called Our Red Road. This morning, I didn't even honi you when I came in. I just walked right by your shallow breath, your eyes shut in the living room, and that bed stuffed with pulu. And all the blurred words projecting onto the backs of your eyelids. Kealanui ma'awai ula kanaloa. I organize your prescription bottles like ki'i along the edges of the kitchen heiau and try to remember how long it's been since you strung a sentence together and draped it over my shoulders. I grew up Mountain View, and I can always see Mauna Kea and Mauna Loa same time. In the afternoon, I thicken your drinking water, obsessing on what you'll want for the road, and pack some pa'i'ai ame kai'a, bundled guesswork, disguised as intention once the oceans open up. I keep a version of you in my pocket that asks, maybe this red road is not mine, but ours, boy. So make some food for you too. In the evening, I sit you up, and our eyes trace the octopus's footprints moonlit in the yard grass. You smile and gulp the thick water, and I keep obsessing about which mu'u you want to wear in the va'a. Mahalo. This next poem is for my mother and for our mother, Papa Hanau Moku. It's called Mother's Chemo Cycles. I help my mother walk her breast through clamping hospital doors. Mo'o have been gathering for weeks around her chest, clicking, scratching. At least it's not anchored, they say, to land, to muscle and bone. This thread of moons looping back through the deepest of carvings. Mohalu, hua, akua, hoku, mahealani, kulua. This horizon is seeping ordinances, passing fullness, sunken God fruits unfolding. I try clearing the edges of her body, lacerated by plastic lei and styrofoam. We throw down seeds together in parking lots, and we smile at the bold flowers still sprouting from storied crevices, still singing from under the lesions about returning to a sound coherence. My body, she says, needs old songs so I can tremble again. The cardboard uala is no good. The Milky Way has soured. I blend olena and avapuhi with ripe mai'a for her nausea. I watch my mother run hands through her hair, and the last o'o feathers fall. Sing about the moon, she says. Sing about fullness. Sing until everyone knows all the songs again. Mahalo. So this next one is about my kupuna nuis, the farthest I can go back with names. And it's called Ka'aha Nui Kane Keleka Noho Wahine. I cannot draw a line beyond your names. Back through the brindled understory along Pina'au stream, Mauka. Our line has gone as far as it can go for now. Anchored to the pohaku there, baking his chest and gossiping with the other stones about who slept with who. One of you knew Olona well, so I've been told, which explains my love for the braid, my love for the word taught, and my desire to always look for the phrase inevitable unraveling, my obsession with what time can do to a spine. One of your great-great-great-grandchildren, my grandfather, would pour pa'akai into his pant pocket as a child whenever he went into the forest. I do that too sometimes as an adult. Did you teach us that? Tell me a story, e ku'umau kupuna e, please. Who were the gods you smiled for? Who were your favorite plant people? And what was the word you used to describe the sound of the whales slapping their tails off the coast of our Ke'anai that vibrated the lau and the lo'i? As I dream about how your cheekbones beveled in afternoon shade, I wonder if you both enjoyed sucking on mango seeds as much as I do. Of course you did. I also wonder if one of you abstained from sucking the last one so the other could enjoy it. Wow. My last one. So this is a poem called Kahulu, and Hawaiian, Kahulu literally means the feather. But if anyone's taken Moʻolelo Hawaiʻi classes, kahulu is the word that's used to define an adjective in Olelo. And it's only used in the context of that learning process. And I really like the idea of an adjective being a feather. Kahulu. Our kupuna put feathers on our words, and the rain beads. And we glide, rising and diving, piercing sea skin. Marks for mating signal verbed tongues from beak to beak. And we fall into outspread wings, waiting to welcome us home. Our kupuna put feathers on our words as storms come, go, linger. Our feathers scatter the light and keep our stories warm. They harmonize us into the land with no lines to question, where she ends and we begin. Our kupuna put feathers on our words to remind us how wonderful it is to ruffle our bodies in the stream. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Donovan. Mahalo to your mom and to all your kupuna for raising a poet who teaches us that our stories can and should malama care. All right, our final poet is Noʻu Revilla, who is an ʻŌiwi poet and educator. Her debut book, Ask the Brindled, Milkweed Editions 2022, won the 2021 National Poetry Series. She's a lifetime student of Haunani-Kay Trask and prioritizes collaboration, movement, and gratitude in her practice. So please make some noise for Noʻu Revilla.
Aloha pumehana kākou. It's been so long since I've had the pleasure of hearing Dee read new work, and I'm just, so similar to my hoa, I want to ground in gratitude first. I'm sitting in what Dee just read, so I'm like having to recalibrate in front of everyone. But mahalo nui loa, of course, to Craig Santos Perez for inviting me to be part of this, as you all can tell, beautiful conversation so far. Mahalo to the Arts and Research Center for hosting this gathering. And mahalo to Kealiʻi and Dee for everything you write. And to the ʻŌiwi poets joining us tonight. My ʻea is connected to your ʻea. Mahalo nui loa. So, speaking of ʻea, okay. As I was preparing for tonight's event, I was thinking about, what distinguishes ʻŌiwi poetry. And my mind immediately ran to this juxtaposition that I often share with students. So several years ago, can everyone see this? Okay, image. Oh, so I was very lucky several years ago to find this anthology series that's related to Hawaii's Poets in the School program. And the volumes of this anthology series, each of which is entitled Moʻolelo Hawaiʻi, not only features student poems from elementary school, all ages really. It not only features their poems, but also the lesson plans and the pedagogical reflections of the poets who came into the schools to facilitate these workshops. And it's just this abundant archive of Hawaii poetry. And I often like to pair a line that I want to share with you tonight, written by a Hawaii poet, with the definitional work of a canonical American poet that many of you may know, Emily Dickinson. So at the end of the 19th century, Emily Dickinson offered a definition of poetry in a letter to a male editor. And she wrote, "If I read a book and it makes my whole body so cold, no fire can ever warm me, I know that is poetry. If I feel physically as if the top of my head were taken off, I know that is poetry." Mahalo, Emily. No matter how vivid this definition is, though, I much prefer the following line from Dawn Ishii, who at the time her work was published in one of these volumes of Moʻolelo Hawaiʻi, was a 6th grader at Kapi'olani Elementary School. So Emily says, "If I feel physically as if the top of my head were taken off, I know that is poetry." Dawn Ishii in grade 6 says, "My brain exploded into poi." Mahalo, Dawn, for your Aina-based intelligence. Mahalo to the Poets in the Schools program for prioritizing students, for prioritizing the relationship between land and body. And it's lines like Dawn's that remind me we don't have to go far for inspiration. Our Aina, our ancestral knowledges, our lived experiences are valid sources of knowledge. We don't have to go far for inspiration. So in honor of where we do go, I want to invite my tuhoa, Kealiʻi and Dee, to play a literary game with me, Choose Your Own Holo Holo, which is clearly riffing off of Choose Your Own Adventure. Kealiʻi and Dee, I will present you with a piece of story. Then I'm going to ask you to choose what to do next. Your choice will lead us to a specific poem, which will activate a different story. So at each split in the road, I'll share the different choices in the chat so that you and everyone who has been generous enough to join us tonight can see your options. Kealiʻi, Dee, are you willing to play with me?
Aye.
Ready?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So Dawn Ishii wrote, "My brain exploded into poi." Kealiʻi, the first choice goes to you. If my brain exploded into poi, who would you call? My grandma in Maui or my wife in Palolo?
That is a tough choice. Your grandma in Maui. I'd call your wife after that.
We are honoring kupuna after all tonight, right? So let's go to the mo'o. Okay, the mo'o nui. Kealiʻi, you chose to call my grandma in Maui. And so you bring us to this poem. Welcome to the Gut House. Outside a door in East Maui, a brindled dog sits. No cars drive the dirt road. No child appears with food to share or ask for. There is only inside today. A telephone cries, and to each caller, a grandmother chirps, "Aloha, God bless you." In a corner bedroom, a girl is kept in bed, surrounded by mosquito nets and women who take turns binding her wound. Miles of violence in their eyes. They know how to speed through marrow. They know scars and stars. Two things a woman should never count in relation to her body. The number of names, maybe, wired around her stomach. The number of stomachs opened like doors, and not so much cleaned as cleaned of secrets. Yes, there is something better than the heart. A whirring scent deep in the body, like a girl in a house. You are finally home. No glorified organ, no heroic heart, only guts, viscera. Ask any Hawaiian. Drive the dirt road, follow my grandmother's voice. She will bless you. My aunties and cousins, their long fingers pinned to the walls, they point the way to a corner bedroom, this poem. My sister is closing the mosquito net. I am pooling in a bed of gauze. New versions of the Bible will use the word heart. Ask any Hawaiian where it really hurts. Even my grandma, God bless you. Ask the brindled dog guarding my stomach. D, we are in East Maui, and you and I, the gut work we've done as friends is documented in so many exquisite corpse games, I lost count.
Oh my God.
Some of our collaborative poems have even felt prophetic. Yet what do we do in the absence of prophecies? Do you dig until you hit thigh bone? Or do you dredge the lipo?
That might be an easy one for me because I'm not worthy to dredge the lipo, that's for sure. So I will dig until I hit thigh bone.
I know you. Okay. So we dig until we hit thigh bone. Can everyone see a photograph of me in a doorway? Mahalo. Please let me know if you cannot hear the following audio track as we go into the next part of our story that Dee has taken us to. Iwihilo means thigh bone, means core of one's being.
I have no prophecies. My
My name is new and narrow.
Owai ko'ino?
Without question, I watch you salt the corners of an empty house in Palolo.
My,
Chant the sky down until it blackens. And a star becomes a spade in your throat. Ele kumai. You dislodge the metal and tell me my fortune.
You are more than
Tell
omen.
me, after whose claw marks was I named, still legible on Maui cliffs?
You are more
Tell
than
me.
war.
How waters be damned, be history. Or tell me the feel of it now, burrowing so deep inside me, till I was never thigh bone, and you see. Mahalo Keali'i for taking us to East Maui. Mahalo D for taking us into Iwihilo. And here we find a seed. And when I think of seed as an educator, I can't help but think of my haumana, who have gotten me through so much despair because they really, really believe in the power of mo'olelo, the power of poetry. As a haumana of Teresia Tiaiwa, I wish to leave you with a poem dedicated to her because it shares, it's based on language that many of us in Oceania recognize as really good reminder. This poem, We the Aching Next, was inspired by the Golden Shovel Forum, which was established by Terrence Hayes, who was embodying his respect for Gwendolyn Brooks. And the poem uses the words of Teresia Tiaiwa as the po'o, the beginning rather than the end of the lines. So in celebration of Teresia Tiaiwa, in celebration of all those in our literary mo'oku'oho who taught us how to be fearless, mahalo. Teresia Tiaiwa said, "We sweat and cry salt water, so we know that the ocean is really in our blood." We teach each other. Be quench enough for huli, kahonua, sweat. The sound your vela makes in my wide and narrow waters. I undrought for you. In which va did you cry the wrong name? Did you forget that you are salt water and I am Mo'opuna of Wailuku River? So we run together, stone eyes open. Ua lava. No cut from kin, death from the flickering sleep of stones. We are that black, blue onward. We, the aching next. The ocean is really irreconcilable. The ocean is really that guardian to kill your guardian of fear. The ocean is real. If it's something to believe in, if faith, after all this, is what you seek, face it with me in our coming. Dredge the lipo names from our blood. Mahalo me kana ʻaha.
Mahalo.
Mahalo Noʻu, mahalo to your grandma, to Maui, to all your haumana, to Teresia as well for raising such a poet who's willing to take us on a poetic holo holo, which was so invigorating and transformative. Mahalo. All right, at this point, everyone in the live stream is welcome to flow in with us, and any questions you might have, please put them up and they'll be transmitted to me. I have many questions for these talented poets, so I'm going to ask if they be brought on with me. And many of these questions relate to I think a lot of the interests of the ARC in the intersection of indigenous culture, arts, and language. And so my first question for you three is a big one and kind of a simple question too, but I'm just curious if you can talk a little bit about how your ʻŌiwi, your Native Hawaiian culture has shaped your writing. And maybe we can go ahead and start in the order we read. So Keali, do you want to get us started?
I don't know if I remember a time when I didn't, in some way, shape, or form, shape my poetry. No's heard me say this before when we were at AWP, but I do use poetry as a way to explore culture, history, language, or mo'olelo. Sometimes like things will be percolating in my mind and I don't get to have a better relationship until I start to do the poetry. So like currently where I'm living now in Kailua, that is very much, this is very much family land. My family's been here for many, many generations. And you know, it's the stories that I've been told about my family in Kailua that help me connect. But through poetry, I begin to explore my relationship to this land, and that helps to deepen my understanding and get me to ask more questions and pay better attention. So that's where I'll leave my answer for now.
That's mahalo. Donovan?
That is a big question, but it's something I think about a lot. And I probably have different answers for what kind of person I was when I was thinking about them. If I look back from now till when I really kind of seriously wanted to become a writer, you know, at the very beginning of that spectrum, it was when my grandfather passed, and the physical absence has not made me stop writing ever since. But in terms of culture and ʻŌlelo, when I first realized how little I knew about us, you know, I was simultaneously wanted to be a writer. I wanted to learn all the writing elements and the story elements, and you know, what good dialogue is, what is a good narrative. All of that went out the window early on because I knew that wasn't the most important thing for me to understand and me to wrap my na'au around, because of where I wanted to go with writing towards my grandfather. So I think taking Hawaiian language every semester, all the way from my undergrad, all the way through the PhD program, it continued to feed my writing in English, even if I wasn't writing something that was literally using ʻŌlelo. I feel like the things I was learning in Kabaka Kuokolani, in ʻŌlelo classes, and on my own in the library, Xeroxing books, big books, out of print books. It was my journey became circular. I don't know if that makes sense, but my relationship with ʻŌlelo, the way I write, the way I think I write, it's never aligned. I'm always returning to something, and I'm always realizing something new. And I hope that keeps going.
Yup. You know, Dee and I started our friendship. One of our origin stories is that we both smuggled literature on the 5th floor of Hamilton Library in the Hawaiian collection. The Xerox was like our meeting place. That 5th floor was just very important for us. I'm so happy to be sharing space with all of you. But I think one thing, I come from aunties who could hula the entire moana into a tuna can if they wanted. I come from a father who hana pa'a as a fisherman, but he could hold you in the palm of his hand when he told a story. And when you start studying ʻŌiwi literature, in all the different ways that it manifests, you realize that we come from people who respected their audience so much, and who respected that it was a relationship, that the person composing mele and mo'olelo, we had a relationship, and therefore a kuleana to our readers. And we had to respect that, i ka ʻōlelo no ke ola, i ka ʻōlelo no ka make. And I tell my readers, my students, you need to malama your reader. How will you malama your reader? How will you care for your reader? How will you guide your reader through this huaka'i of a poem? And I'm very proud of that we respect that pilina. And it's not just this extractive performance. It's not just this kind of solo celebrity status. We are here to make story with you. It's a collaborative call and response. And I bring that with me every time I write.
Mahalo, all of you. That's really powerful reflections on how your culture really shapes your work, and that note about collaboration and weaving in both the audience and the composer, I think was really profound, and leads me into my next question. As all of us heard, you three poets kind of weave together English and ʻŌlelo Hawaiʻi, or Hawaiian language. And I'm wondering if you could talk about the way poetry has become a space for you to reclaim or revitalize your indigenous heritage language, and different ways that you try to compose multilingually. Maybe I could ask Donovan to start this time.
Oh. Maybe, okay, so in my book about my grandfather, there's a walking poem at the end where I metaphorically put his file cabinet on my back and I walk around Pu'uloa, Eva Beach, all the places that he took me, all the places that raised me along with him. And speaking about Vahipana and the layers and stratifications of stories, I looked at the page as a excavation of things that happened under my grandfather and my story. You know, colonial histories, histories about all of Ahipana in Ewa that I never knew until I had the privilege to access books in a graduate program. So the page became this kind of layered stories, temporal stories, but they all existed in the same space. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, mahalo. No?
This is just, you know, we gotta have a drink after this. You know what I mean? I mean, I think the three of us could go on and on and on about this, and that's a good thing, and it should be like that. And full transparency, I will forever be learning my ʻŌlelo makuahine. I was not fortunate to be raised in a household where ʻŌlelo Hawaiʻi was spoken day in and day out, because colonization is brutal and dismissive of our mother tongues. So I learned in my 20s, and I continue to learn. But when I think just, you know, when you just take a moment, can we just take a moment and just be like, just sit in how beautiful and intelligent our language is, and how rooted in our aina and our moana it is. So just kind of, because I could talk about this, you know, forever. One of the poems that I was happy to share tonight was Iwihilo, means thigh bone, means core of one's being. And that amplified poem was a collaboration between me and the incredible ʻŌiwi multidisciplinary artist Jocelyn Ng, and Richard Hamasaki, who recorded and produced the track, and Kai Hamasaki, who audio mastered the track. Shout out to Wonsolwara Productions. Language will position you differently. It will conjure different relationships. So in English, if I were to say, come here, that doesn't sonically pair with the word water. But in ʻŌlelo Hawaiʻi, in my ʻŌlelo makuahine, mai, that come here, mai, that does sonically pair with our word for water, which is vai. So you enter a different pilina, your body shifts, your whole sense of intimacy shifts. In English, come here and water share no immediate intimacy. In my language, in our language, of course, that shares intimacy. That is the core of intimacy. Come here, come and share my water. Like, I want you to be so close to me that you are touching my water, you know? So when you're able to step into your ʻŌlelo makuahine, you're able to feel the way your kupuna felt. And it is a privilege. And I want to make that clear, because so many of us are still learning and did not have the privilege of being raised with fluent speakers. So it is a privilege to be able to learn my language.
I don't know if I have anything more to add to what Noʻu and Donovan said on that, but similar to Noʻu, I know that it is a constant journey of learning or re-remembering our ʻŌlelo. And in terms of poetry, usage of ʻŌlelo in my own work, it just allows me to further explore, to think, to build that relationality, positionality, and always, it's almost like using ʻŌlelo, it's almost like trying to write my way back into Paul, you know? trying to find my way back into the night that birthed us. And Olelo is one way that that happens. You know, every little piece, every little feather, as you said, Kūhiō, you know, gets us closer and closer to being in that expansive night that is our ancestors, you know. So I'll leave it there.
That's beautiful. You know, thinking about what Donovan said about the Wahipana or storied places, and what Noʻu said about Aina and Moana, or the land and the water. And so my next question, you know, it's a large question, but really just curious to hear your thoughts on what you see as a relationship between Hawaiian understandings of nature and its expression in your own poetry. And so let's see, I think I want to call on Noʻu to start this time. Mahalo, Noʻu.
Yeah. I have this poem called Don't Have Sex with Gods. Spoiler alert, do have sex with gods. We've always had sex with gods. But there's a section that says, you know, if Aina is that which feeds, if Aloha Aina is love and lover of the land, then she who feeds is she who fucks. Aina will fuck back. And it's just, it blows my mind that there are people circling us who don't see ola in their water, in their soil, in their trees. It just blows my mind. So I think, again, I really am, I appreciate the capaciousness of my kupuna to see and respect and carry the life that is separate from us, but deeply connected, of course. But the land has its own life, the waters have their own life. And I think being able to begin there, that's a given already. That is a given already. And because of that, I can write poems about the rain in Kalihi being the third lover in this punalua between two Kanaka who went to a cave to make love. It was raining, so they stayed there. But the rain is part of that lovemaking. I can write a poem like that because I've been taught to see rain as life, another life. So again, this is just like an opportunity to say, mahalo to my kupuna, right?
Mahalo. Keali?
Gosh, I'm just thinking of Noah talking about land and fucking now. The rain. When you brought up the rain, I think what I'm thinking of is that how we see nature has always been embodied. I think of a song that is meaningful to many Hawaiians, but to my family in particular, Kamakani Kaʻili Aloha, the love snatching wind. And shout out to Maui folks for that one too. That is about my ancestor who is from Maui and was known to have had many, many lovers, and one decided to win her back through the song. But just our relation to the land is so embodied and it's so poetic, and I don't think we have our own. How could we have poetry without land? You know, how could we have, without all that expression of it, land, water, rain, air, all of it itself? And so, you know, I go back to like the relationship between myself and the very land itself shows up in poetry, but through the sensual experiences. So you're talking about the rain in Kalihi. No, I'm thinking of the makahiki rains that's hitting me as I'm walking along Old Kalaniʻa Road, and to me that's Lono licking me, you know, that's Lono getting me wet, you know. So yeah, Donovan, I want to hear if you can launch off of that.
Put up the caution wet sign over here. Well, this kind of goes back to what I was talking about, the first question about that spectrum of understanding and Moʻolelo, and because now after how many years, I stare at the sky and I pay attention to the degrees of the downpours and where the sun rises and where the sun sets. I mean, I tried planting in the last couple years, you know, because working from home, got to do something. But just doing that, just gardening is humbling. And to just like Noʻu was saying, just the awe of scratching the surface of what our kupuna did every day, every year, every decade, every century, with far less than what we have is just amazing to me, to the point where just thinking about it is, sometimes I want to write a poem about what I'm thinking about that relationship. And it just reminded me of I forgot who it was. I think it was Chadwick Allen. And he has this great kind of, and he's very precise. He's a scholar. I think he's at University of Washington still, trans-Indigenous scholar. But he has this term called, I think it's blood/land/memory. And I really dig his kind of analysis, because he's very precise, at least from my understanding. Land is in the middle of that, and blood and memory is kind of caressing it. Land is always in the middle, and he uses it as this kind of term or whatever, complex, to refer to how we define ourselves as, we define indigeneity, or how we can free ourselves from the circumstances that we're in, how I can define my own indigeneity, where I fit in the larger indigenous, whatever. Because I can write a poem about my mother and it can still be about Honua. Sometimes I get asked to submit poems to eco-literature themed. And I said, well, what do you mean? Because sometimes all of my poems, maybe, at least to me, are about Aina, even if I'm just talking about, my mother or cancer, or the gift for me of writing about my ancestors, or even anything today, is I get to see all these connections that I'd never realized, and it happens to me every day. Mm-hmm. And I hope it keeps happening.
Hello, Donovan, for talking about all the connections between land, language, and culture, and thank you, Keali, for talking about kind of the intimacy of our ecologies that we are all, of course, a part of, and we can touch and move beyond on the borders and things that separate us. And of course, we thank you for talking about kind of the erotics of language. I have so many more questions, and I think we could do a whole nother conversation about desire, the erotics, and intimacy in Hawaiian poetry and poetics. Maybe the Arts Research Center will fund that next event. Join us next time. But unfortunately, we're out of time, so we can't talk about that right now, but I know you all want to. But with that said, I want to again mahalo all of you for sharing your powerful and inspirational and just really profound words. Mahalo to everyone for joining us across the world. And mahalo to Lori and to Beth and to everyone at ARC and UC Berkeley for highlighting Hawaiian poets and poetry. I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend and that you will check out these poets and their books, as well as all the anthologies that they've edited and have been published. Mahalo, everyone.